Hello everyone and welcome to another Watercolor Wednesday. I am Allison with the blog A Glimpse Inside, and today we are going to paint this little tree with a bench, so kind of like a quiet place to sit and relax and maybe ponder what's happening right now with everything that's going on in the world. So yeah, this painting will only be 3 stamps. I'm using 5 colors, but you could probably even down this to less than that. And it shouldn't take us that long. The longest thing that will take us is we will be using the masking pen, and so we'll have to wait for a minute or two for that to dry. But other than that, let's get started. So today, this is a 4x3 kind of rectangle. But you can make this on something bigger. I started on a 4x4 paper with a different kind of concept in mind, and then decided I wanted it to be a little smaller. So, and then for our stamps, we will be using from the old barn set this tree. But if you don't have this set and you have the tree set, you can also use the big tree out of the tree set. So either one, but I'm using this one. And then out of the foliage set 4, I'm using this vine, but you can use either of the vines. And then from the bench set, I'm using the one that faces forward, but you could also use the one that faces like out, like it's overlooking maybe some water or something. So lots of options to kind of change it up to however you want to do it. And then as for markers, I'm doing number 17 steel blue, number 15 olive green, number 43 brilliant yellow, number 86 African violet, and then instead of sepia this time I'm doing number 85 mocha, but you could also just use sepia. And then we will be using our masking liquid pen, the Molotow marker. So this is actually what we're going to start with. So I want my tree to be real wide, but I want it, it's kind of hard to see here, but I want to do like little blooms in the tree, almost like, you know, it's the spring blossoms coming out. So I'm just going to kind of use my stamp as like a little mini guide for me and figure out where I want to add all of my masking dots. So here's kind of a rough estimate, and so I'm going to kind of stick to this area and then go a little wider. So with this, all you do is press down. My tip is a little smush, so I get kind of bigger dots, and then I have a weird dry spot on it. So I kind of have to tap mine a couple times. But if yours is new, you should just be able to touch it once and it should be good. So this will dry, and then we'll be able to stamp right over it, and then we will wipe it off at the end, and anywhere that this was will be neat. So it's pretty cool. So I'm going to do some bigger dots. I'm going to do some smaller dots. So it may look pretty random, but once we get our tree branch, our tree stamped into here, and then get our greenery in, it won't look quite so weird anymore. So, okay, I'm just going to stop there. I'm going to give this a second to dry. I'm just going to fan it. Shouldn't take too long. Let's see. I see like 2 spots that are still wet, so 1 moment. Okay, so while this kind of continues, I'm going to ink my stamp in just mocha. And I'm going to give, you know, the whole tree a good inking. And then I'm going to come back and just kind of go over this lower section of the tree to make sure that this part is dark. I don't want to get too much up in the branches and to make sure that those are darker, because I don't want it to muddle up my green too much once I stamp it on there. So now I'm just going to kind of place it right into those polka dots there. I'm going to off center it here and press it down. So there's now my tree, and I'm going to, before I do anything else, I'm going to add some water just to the trunk. So I'm going to pinch off my brush and kind of make it real thin. And I'm just going to kind of dab down here into the trunk of the tree. And then I'm not going to touch any of that super skinny branches. Like, I don't want to even mess with those right now. I'm just trying to kind of, you know, blend this in a little bit. So that's all I'm going to do right there. Okay, so next we're going to take our little vine here, and I'm going to ink up the whole thing with my olive green, and we're just going to add our branches in. So your tree can be as full as you want. It can be, you know, maybe it's just brand new spring tree, however you want to do this. And I'm just going to sit here and stamp my stamp 3 or 4 times before I re-ink it in just a couple different directions. I'm going to just spin my paper. I'm going to try to make sure that I get all of those blue dots in green. Obviously when I add water, they will be in the green, but I'm just trying to ensure that like everything is surrounded so I don't have to drag out too much of the color when I'm adding water. This is a pretty simple, fast painting. You know, good to do when you just have a busy day, but you wanna get creative. So I have a couple pretty low down here in my tree, so I'm just gonna stamp my branches going down. My leaves, a little bit of down here. Just gonna add something right there. Okay, so there is my tree. So super simple, super quick. And now we're just gonna add water to that. So dip your brush in water, pinch it off, and we're just gonna dab all over that. So you can always drag that color out more to spread it. Try to leave, you know, some white areas. A lot of trees, you know, aren't fully solid, so you can see through the leaves. You know, unless they're just super covered. But, you know, most of the time the wind blows, or you can look up and see the sun shining through the trees. So don't, you know, paint this in one solid green bundle. You can add a little bit of water, you can add a lot of water. If you want, don't add water at all. If you like that look of, you know, like a true stamp. It's totally up to you and your preferences and what you like. Okay, I think I got most of my blue dots good here. So I'm going to let this just sit and dry. We'll come back to this in a little bit here. So we are going to do our little bench now. And I'm going to ink the bench up in 2 colors, just like we did with the sepia and the African violet. But this time I'm just going to use the mocha and the African violet. It will work the same way as the sepia. And So starting with the mocha, and now I'm coming over it with the African violet. And then I'm just going to stamp this kind of down here where the bench is just kind of sitting next to and below the tree. So maybe like right there. So it's just like a nice little quiet place to sit. Now this stamp's kind of blotchy, if you can see it, and the lines are really little. So again, like we did with the tree trunk, I'm going to pinch my brush and make it real skinny. And then I'm just going to go over the bench seat, and then I'm going to real carefully go down those lines just to soften those lines a little bit and kind of blend them in. And that's all I'm going to touch. I'm not going to touch the legs of it. I'm not going to touch the little back support. That's it. The bench is done. You could always add a tiny bit of African violet to it if you want, but that is all we're going to do for now. So now I'm going to put some olive green on my palette, and we're going to add a little bit of grass down here. You could always do like grass at a trail. You could leave off the grass. It's up to you. I'm not going to do like a solid thing of grass, but I'm just going to sit here and just kind of, you know, paint in that maybe you're on a path walking and you just kind of you came upon this little quiet bench under this tree in the shade. And, you know, it's just a perfect little spot to take a rest, think about your day, you know, anything of the sort. So I'm just going to kind of bring my grass up just a little bit here. You can carefully go between those lines if you want. And then I'm just going to kind of come over it a couple times in some spots to give it some more depth and shadow. And then I'm going to put a tiny bit of African violet on my palette. And I'm going to use this just to kind of create a little shadow under the tree. We'll just say like the sun's coming down this direction. So we'll just, you know, it doesn't have to be a big shadow. And then same thing kind of under the bench and right next to the bench. Just to get some depth. Doesn't have to be super dark. Doesn't have to be super big. And then if you accidentally make it too dark and you're not like a huge fan, go back with some green. Ooh, my brush was way too wet for that. See if I can blend that out a little bit. Okay. Let me fix that. There we go. Okay, so before I do anything else with the grass, I'm going to go ahead and add some sky in. So my good old steel blue, number 17 is my sky. And then again, I'm not going to add like the entire sky. I'm just going to kind of fill in a little bit down here. And then I'll touch between those branches. And come around the bench here. And that's all you really have to do. If you want, you can just kind of touch a little bit up here, but you certainly don't have to. But that's all the sky I'm going to do. I mean, it's almost the whole thing, I guess, but we left a little bit of room, right? Okay, so let me come back just a little bit with a drier brush here and try to smooth this back out. Added way too much water right there. We all make mistakes, and that's okay. Okay, so I'm going to take the thin end of my olive green, and I'm just going to, instead of using the super tiny mini grasses, I'm just going to use this and just kind of draw in like what would be little grasses, you know, at the base of the tree or on the feet of the of the bench, and just kind of here and there, just to kind of add a little more texture and dimension and interest to the grass, since it's pretty flat. You don't have to add this part, and if you make this on a bigger scale, you can definitely use the mini grass set, but I don't, I'm acting like we're a little farther away, kind of looking at the spot, so I don't want the grasses to be super big. And that's all we're going to do for that. So this all up here should be dry now. So I'm just going to take my pencil. You can also take an eraser, and you're just going to wipe off with your finger all of that masking fluid. So it sometimes gets a little caked on your finger. You can just wipe it right off and keep going. So, right there. So now you see anywhere where that fluid was, kind of has like a white dot. So what we're going to do is I'm going to take a little bit of my Brilliant Yellow, and we're just going to add some yellow into those little spots, like a little flower. And you don't have to do them in like every spot where it was just the masking fluid. Maybe you have a little bare spot just between your leaves, you can just add a little bit to wherever. So I'm just just taking the tip of my brush and just dabbing a little dot. If you want, you can even just take the marker itself and just the fat end probably, and just touch it to the pen or to the paper. Either way will work. This is just to kind of give the look of a blossoming tree. You can do pink, kind of more like cherry blossoms. You can leave them white, however you want to do it. I just went the yellow route. This is kind of my color palette I think I tend to stick with. All right, so now I'm just going to kind of take a little bit of yellow here and just kind of dab it into the grass, like some of these blossoms or petals have fallen into the grass. I'm not going to do too many. That's probably good right there. And that's really it. What I'm going to do is I am going to come back with the thin side of my yellow. And on some of these, I'm just going to touch the centers of them. You can't really see it on some of them, but sometimes you just get like that extra little dark spot. And it's just kind of what it needed. And that's it. I'm going to sign and date it. And now you just have a quiet little bench to sit and think. Make it a little bigger and use a stamp that says thinking of you. It's the perfect picture to turn to a card, or just, frame and put on a nightstand somewhere. I hope you enjoyed this. Sorry, as I just looked at this, I'm going to go down here too with this pen. I hope you enjoyed this painting. Stay tuned next week for a whole new painting. And if you have any suggestions for me, leave them in the comments or send me a message on social media. I'd love to try to create something that you would like me to try. And I hope you have an awesome rest of your day. I will see you next week. Bye.